Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out here today. I am very excited because we have Matt joining us again, Zach joining us again, and a brand new Marcus Torgensen. I keep pointing the wrong way because you guys like the screen is reversed, but excited to talk about today. We're going to be going into emotional intimacy and loneliness, which I think is something that men struggle with, especially across the board. Before I get into that, I want to hit across a couple of my parameters. And while I'm doing my parameters, my spiel, by all means, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. You'll get your little email. Now, first off, none of us are doctors. I'm pretty sure. At least, Mark, you're not a doctor. Matt, you're not a doctor. Okay. So none of us are doctors. None of us are medical professionals anyway. Anything we do talk about, it's coming from our own experience, things we've heard or dealt with. And so if you are experiencing any sort of distress or getting triggered or anything about what we're talking about, by all means, bounce out, talk to a doc, talk to a friend, talk to somebody that you trust and can manage. June is Men's Mental Health Month, so we are going to be talking about different facets of men's mental health throughout this month, as we have been, and we are going to continue to throughout today and tomorrow in the next few days. And I'm excited to carry on the show. Oh, 90 seconds. Nailed it.
Get anything?
I don't think so. Did I forget something?
Yeah, you did.
What did I forget?
So, Marcus, what we do over here is we try to hold each other accountable, even on the snippiest of little snips.
Yeah.
So, just to, level up. So, when the intro started, you went straight into it. You did not delay 2 seconds.
I did.
Because then your volume was destabilized. So,
Raj. Okay.
So you actually were 2 seconds over.
I was 2 seconds over. And I actually just remembered something I forgot also.
Click
is
it
that
up.
if anybody has any questions or comments, by all means, put them in the comment section here. We throw them all up. Well, not throw them all. We read them, and I put them on the screen like this. Satch, good morning. How's it going? Good to see you. And if you have anything else, by all means, throw it up there. Any comments, we will get them up and discuss them. Now, any thoughts or questions or anything before we get into our topic today? Are we good? All right.
Good. Yeah, I think we're good.
Let's hit
Shaun,
it. All right.
I like your shirt. Looks good.
Thanks, man. It's still covered in sweat and dirt from the single track about 15 minutes ago.
Nice.
I splashed some water on my face and then just got right after it into the potty. I don't mind establishing at least one part of the topic today, which is loneliness. So I'm just going to read something that I had about 12 seconds to type out and define rapidly. So loneliness is a complex and subjective emotional state that arises from a perceived discrepancy between an individual's desired and actual social relationships and connections. It is often characterized by feelings of isolation, emptiness, and a lack of meaningful social interaction and companionship. Loneliness can occur regardless of a person's actual social circumstances. While it is commonly associated with physical isolation or a lack of social contact, loneliness can also be experienced even in the presence of others if the individual does not feel understood, accepted, or emotionally connected to those around them. And it continues on with the definition, etc. And so really one of the aspects that I think we have to touch on today in respect to loneliness is the delta or the difference between people who are lonely all by themselves and people who are lonely in big crowds when they shouldn't be feeling lonely per se. So certainly there are instances where an individual can be lonely or not, depending on who they are surrounded by or not. Is that fair to say to begin with?
I think that's a great start off. Well, let's start off with that question then. The difference between solitude and loneliness, I think, is what we're getting at. Anybody got any thoughts on that right off the bat?
Yeah, and I'll just throw in my 2 cents because I did state this in my live IG chat earlier this morning, and it was in reference to the podcast, and I can't even remember what we were talking about, buddy, but it was with Mark Ormrod and with the Slavage, Seb Lavoie, and I think maybe it was Seb that made the note because I said, I'm totally comfortable in my skin. I don't know if it was because I was an Army sniper, a special operations sniper, or Pathfinder, or I don't even know why or how or when it happened. But you could all disappear right now, and I'd be bummed if I was the only person on the planet. But I'd be quite comfortable with it. I would be bummed, of course, but I wouldn't like it wouldn't tear me apart or it wouldn't be catastrophic. I'm comfortable in solitude. I'm comfortable around people. I don't feel lonely. And so I stated that, Seb stated that, and Mark Ormrod stated that. All three of us in complete agreement of we just don't need people around us. We're happy in our own skin, irrespective of people. And I think it was Seb that made note that that's quite rare to have three people in one room who all state that based on the lives that we've led, and so he felt it was notable, and it was subsequently I then took a little sniff around, and he's kind of right. It is not common to be really really comfortable in your own skin for whatever reason, and so maybe that's part of something that we'll talk about today.
I think so.
Shaun, with that, just adding to that, do you think that's a learned skill, or do you think that's an inherent natural development of a person? Because the three individuals that I didn't see your IG this morning, but the three individuals that you were talking to that about, they, again, we're special forces. I think police force, army were the other two.
Yeah,
military?
Seb,
Yeah.
RCMP ERT leader, and Mark was Royal Marine, and etc. And so the reasonably notable careers, but not. I wouldn't go so far to say that was the reason. I think it's just I've thought about it a lot, buddy. I wish I could give you a straight up solid answer, but I can't. My general opinion is this: I think it's a combination of many factors. Certainly, from the time I was a young boy when we moved from England to Canada at the age of 10, I just went out in the bush and hunted and fished a lot by myself because that's what we did back in the day in a small mountain town, and I felt comfortable doing it. And over a period of years, I was just comfortable walking around in the world without anyone next to me. And then, of course, my military career reinforced that, and all of my subsequent careers reinforced that. But I still feel it's inside of me. I feel that I was born that way,
Yeah.
and I feel it was reinforced through the career paths that I took, and reinforced in the sense of obligated in certain respects as a sniper. I mean, you just got to do everything by yourself to some degree. So I don't know. I think it's a combination of both, Matt. And I wish I could tease out the details to say, well, the magic solution to get good with loneliness is step 1, 2, and 3. But I don't think step 1, 2, and 3 exists.
No, I agree. I don't think it is something like that either. But that's a good point that you brought up. That is, I would love to be able to like dive into that and see if the career paths or how your life and other people's lives developed in loneliness, like especially with the military, the RCMP, things where you have to be super independent, right? I wonder if that was actually had a lot to do with upbringing, because I was the same way. Like when I was growing up, I was in the back 40. My closest neighbor was 2 kilometers away, and that was an 80-year-old. So literally was me running around trails in the bush chasing deer. And then I went into the military, and then that's like same thing. Like you're part of that team, part of that group, but you're also supposed to be super independent and act on your own. So that's interesting that, I wonder if it is a combination of the two aspects.
I think it is, and one of the reasons I put up my Instagram post this morning, which you may not have seen, it was just a photo of me. I've never put that photo out before, first timer. So I was laying on my back and I was trying to pull off my ghillie pants, my sniper ghillie pants. Still had my ghillie suit on, and I won't describe what we were doing at that time. But the reason I was stripping off my ghillie suit pants is to strip down into my stealth gear so that I could stealth insert into a target building. So from sniper to stealth insertion, those are levels, man. Those are levels that I didn't understood existed when I was in high school. And so the reason I put up that post is because I watched a graduation ceremony over this weekend. Of course, our youngest son just graduated grade 12 into rural pre-med. And as he was walking down the carpet, I noted the difference between how he was confidently and calmly walking down that red carpet moment versus a kid with, to make an extreme comparison, a kid who was strutting down the red carpet like he was Matthew McConaughey. I swear he was adjusting his sunglasses every 3 seconds.
Right.
He was all right. He was just strutting his way down, levitating down the red carpet. And at one point he stopped, and I won't do it, but he flipped a double birds to the entire crowd as if like he was a double Oscar winner. And so I looked at that young man walk by and I thought, bro, you are going to get a really rude awakening. And as I considered that young fella and watching him all weekend, that's his gig. That's how he's flaring out. He thinks that he's got it all sorted out right now. And I wondered, why is that? How is that? Did his parents, did society fail him, or what was it? And so I made some social commentary on that, but I'll get back to my point. The fact remains that until you start doing hard things or you start understanding that there's levels to the game, you get to be Matthew McConaughey in your head. And if you and if you pretend that you're Matthew McConaughey long enough, you get to walk around the world without meeting people because you think you are the people, you are the man, you are it, you've accomplished everything. There's no need to interact. And I just think that that's a rapid way to lose sight of how to do life properly.
I agree. Marcus, you got any thoughts on it?
Well, I'm just listening to upbringings, and then obviously I'm thinking about my own upbringing, and I didn't have a lot of friends, but as an adult, like I'm only going to speak as an adult now, that loneliness is a choice in many aspects, and the confidence of being in one's skin only happens when you've come to terms with the fact that you're not comfortable in your skin and doing active things to change that. And I'm not surprised that there's many people on here, the ones I'm talking to, plus Seb and others, that are comfortable being alone because you're okay. You don't need outside stimulation. You don't need approval of others to make or break your day. But I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that the people on here right now and others that you've mentioned in the past have gone through certain tribulations to being okay by themselves and on their own, and not in a negative way. There's a lot of people who will self-isolate because I don't need human interaction. I can do everything by myself. But that's not necessarily a positive way of self-isolation. I'm getting the impression that Shaun could definitely be by himself, but he also appreciates being around his family, right? Like there's a need to be by yourselves, and there's an appreciation of being by yourself. And I think that just comes through trials and tribulations and appreciation of where you've come from to where you're going to be, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
100%. Yeah. Zach, you got any thoughts?
Where do I start with those thoughts?
At the beginning. Start there.
Yeah. No, I'm with you guys on all of this. I think the one thing is, for myself, I can say it was the ego, similar to what you said, Shaun. That one guy strutting, thinking he's got it made. Until you fall a few times, you realize, holy shit.
Hey.
Sorry. Holy smokes. You have a lot of things to learn in life. And you got to start. But you got to take that accountability. No one's going to do it for you. I think some of the greatest lessons I've learned have been in darkness, being alone. I used to run away from myself, constantly out, whether it's at the bar, whether it's just meeting friends. And let's just say this, friends, because where are they today? Right? So things change, you grow. Not saying they were bad. You just need to get better for you and be a better you for you. And I think as you start leveling up in life, it's a interpersonal, yet it's an intrapersonal journey. So oftentimes we're looking at the external factors. What more things can I get out of life in terms of materialistically, from our partners, whomever? But it starts with us. We've heard that phrase, you got to put the oxygen mask on before you help the other person out. And I think it's so true.
Yeah. Any other, Shaun, you got something?
Yeah. I'd like to draw a comparison between comfortable in my own skin or comfortable with loneliness and emotional insensitivity. And so I have loneliness locked down hard. I love it. It's good. I'm totally good with it. But in so doing, it makes me not great at sensitivity to other people's sensitive emotions. Like if you're really sensitive, you probably shouldn't hang around with me because I'm not that emotional sensitive to your sensitivities. I get it. I I've been told that I'm empathic in the sense of I get an instant read on someone and I know where they're at in their emotions instantly, and I'm told I'm good at it. But if I'm good at it, that's one thing. That doesn't mean that I'm going to then turn into the Dalai Lama. I'm just not. I am who I am. I understand the person in front of me, but I can be insensitive at times because I'm kind of hard. And so my comfortableness in myself and my comfortableness in being around others doesn't cause me to look at someone who's supposed to be all large and in charge and delicately tiptoe around the subject as if I'm supposed to give them so much respect that we can't talk about the meat and potatoes of how they can do things better. So I've always been a little emotional, insensitive in these moments, and so it's something that I've got to do better. So I'm drawing the comparison between I'm good at loneliness. I'm not that great at emotional sensitivity if the person's really sensitive.
But that's the art of mastering ourselves. So,
It
Shaun,
is.
I have maybe more high on the EQ side than yourself, but I learn from you and vice versa. And this is the part of that. We as humans, the more we open up, the more we grow and learn from one another. So it's been an honor to learn from you. So thank you for that.
Dude, it's a two-way street, of course.
Now, I do want to point out one thing. Shaun, you're using the term loneliness, but I think really what you're talking about is solitude. Like you're perfectly calm in solitude in terms of, because do you actually feel lonely when you're in solitude?
No, but I understand the difference between solitude and
Yeah.
loneliness. But if loneliness was to creep in somehow, I'm totally comfortable with it. Like I just never feel lonely. So I am in solitude, or I might be in this moment hanging out with you guys, or I could be in the biggest freak show circus in the world, standing right in the middle of it, surrounded by the hordes. And I still would be quite comfortable in the solitude of the moment and not feeling lonely or anything. I just manage my space irrespective of what's going on around me.
Can I ask you something, gents? Has there ever been a moment where you've been in a room and you felt alone?
Yeah.
Like you just don't fit in. You just don't belong there. There's something off.
Yeah. Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, 100%. So I kind of ex-military, 25 years, grew up in backwards Ontario, right? But now I'm working in a college here at NAIT in Edmonton, right? And I'm surrounded by 18, 25-year-olds, right? And I will get in. I have my own way of doing things because, I'm 48 and I feel alone half the time because I'm working with people who are not at my age, who don't have the same values of me and don't have the same life experience. In that regards, yeah. So I can't really talk to them like this with you guys because we have a different type of conversation. And I do feel like I am by myself a good chunk of the time at work.
Well, Matt, how come you and I can relate? How come I can relate to individuals from the military or first responders? Never been in any of that. None of my family members have. But how come that happens? Why do you think that is?
Well, first off, this is the first interaction that we have, right? So we are actually very focused on a very solid topic, right? So we are both interacting with the topic together versus interacting as a more social matter, right? Who knows? Like maybe if we ever met together, we wouldn't click, right? That might be just a thing. But right now we're actually focused on a subject, and that's a different thing. That's kind of the mindset of we're getting on this, right? But when you work with a person or you're with a person, I don't want to say even with a relationship, because my last relationship was I was lonely in my last relationship with my ex. We started out great, we had a good values, but as we went through the years, values changed and we couldn't relate and we couldn't follow through. And so like there was times I would go home and I would be like, hey, yeah, I'm here with my dogs. I got this beautiful woman beside me and I am lonely as sin. Like I I don't even want to come in the house at times, right?
Hmm.
So,
do you think it's someone else, like that's an external factor, or do you think it's within ourselves, like you are needing a higher purpose, a being of existence of
yeah,
who you are?
yeah, I'll take that on both sides. With the relationship that failed, yes, that was what you were saying, that it was more of an internal, more of the evolution side of the house, and one person couldn't keep up and the other one just had to get going, right? When it comes in the workplace, it's life experiences and just a difference of, well, experience, right? So I think it's I keep on coming back to this whole it's a learned thing for loneliness, right? And I think that's, for me, that's what it was. And to get back back to Shaun, my loneliness turned into solitude, right? I learned to be comfortable lonely, and that loneliness turned into solitude. And I'm happy by myself 99% of the time now. And even with I'm with other people, like I am still on my own path. I am still on my own direction. I'll bring you with me if you want to keep up, but I'm on my own path, right? So it's, again, it sounds not emotional or, very rigid, but that solitude, that aloneness is actually provided and proved to be very valuable for me. But it was a learned skill, right? It was something I had to learn. I had to turn loneliness into aloneness to make it function for me.
Marcus or Shaun, you got any thoughts?
I do just have a little, I have to rejig my earlier comments based on what Matt just said, because he defined it a little bit tighter than I did. So I have to reshape my language in the sense that I'm totally comfortable alone. So I'm comfortable in solitude, etc. But to Matt's point, in groups where I'm standing in a room and I'm looking around, sometimes I think this, I'm in a room of normal people. And I know that sounds terrible. I know I'm such a bad dude for thinking that, but my life has just been a bit different than most people. And as I look around, it's predictable lifestyles with predictable outcomes. And that's awesome, man. Like let's just get it out of the way. You're all better people than I am in that moment, so that we don't have to qualify. I rock, you suck, I suck, you rock, whatever. I just look at a room sometimes and I think normal people, and you don't understand me, and sometimes I barely understand y'all, and sometimes I just don't want to understand the room, because that room is 10,000 rooms before it that I've stood in and looked around and thought, man, I'm the only dude in here who has seen the things I've seen or done the things I've done or lived the life I've lived. And somehow I feel a little apart or a little disconnected from the group without feeling like the line between us has snapped. I'm still part of it, but I'm standing off to the side, observing it, sometimes shaking my head, sometimes shrugging my shoulders, sometimes rolling my eyes, sometimes realizing that I have shortcomings. Lots of self-reflection in those moments when you can be comfortable in the solitude of a group. It's sometimes how I've done my best self-reflection to understand I need to pick up my pace by saying that I don't connect with the people in the room because they're normies, for lack of a better term. That moment has been some of my greatest breakthroughs in, Shaun, you're sucking right now, you loser. You got to pick up your pace. You've got to understand that the normies in front of you are actually crushing it in this, and this area far better than I ever have. And I better pull up my socks and get to work on that, and that area. Even if I don't vibe with them, even if they don't understand me and I barely understand them, I can recognize in a group, as I'm standing there in solitude, the opportunities standing in front of me as I view them through my solitary ways.
Yeah, and see, that's the difference. There's ignorance, right? So you could be ignorant about it and say, well, I'm better than them, or whatever you want to say. But you're saying, here's an opportunity for me to grow and learn. And I think that's a journey on its own. To learn that skill, that's a skill. Because you could just say, well, I don't jive with Matt, for example, in person. So that's it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're human beings, right? Being, the key word. We've got to learn from one another. That's how we get better.
Yeah, 100%. Marcus, you got any thoughts on anything we've got?
Well, I take a very simplistic approach to pretty much every aspect of my life. And since everybody on here and on planet Earth all bleeds, craps, and cries the exact same way, it's not hard for me to find some type of commonality with somebody, regardless of what they've done in their past or what have you. Considering that every single person is uh, a screw up in some way, shape, or form. What is it? We're all a villain in somebody's story.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in a group, and I talk for a living, that's what I do. So to be in a room filled with strangers and have perception of nothing in common, like I've got these all you gentlemen here, and I don't even know what I would say I have in common per se with you, except for the fact that we're all Canadian, and backgrounds are probably incredibly different. So instead of worrying, I don't worry about what's different. I just look at what's similar, and what's similar is we all bleed, crap, and cry the same. That immediately negates any kind of I can have nothing in common with this person. And the challenge for me, or the cool part for me, is to find out what is it about your history, or what about your person now that I can get something to chew on. And everybody's got something that's interesting. Some people just you got to dig a little deeper to get to the interesting stuff, because people are usually, you know, the introverts are, they don't want to talk about themselves or want to talk about anything. So you just have to ask probing questions, which may seem like an interrogation at times. However, if the intent behind it is because I just want to know you and what you got going on, that's where the fascination comes in with being in. And I'm going with groups just because Shaun was talking about being in a setting filled with people, or a school setting with. And I'll admit, at my age, 54, being around a bunch of 18 or 20-year-olds can be a challenge of my patience, because it's difficult for me to find relatabilities without, I have to not live in the past. I can't be like, well, when I was 20, we did this. I have to let go of that and be like, okay, so you're 20 and what do you have to offer this conversation? And I'm sure everybody on here will say, well, we got about a 5-minute window there. I got about 5 minutes of hearing what they have to say before I'm going to lose interest, because for the most part, there is a huge gap in our generation, or at least my generation, and this generation that's now. And I'm done talking.
Yeah. It actually goes it goes into what I actually wanted to get into next here quite well. I'm going to hit a couple comments though, because there's some great ones here. Any other thoughts before I jump into those though?
Yes, I am obligated to build up of what Marcus just said, which was awesome. And so it's this. Marcus is in a position, perhaps, and I don't know your background, buddy, so my apologies, but you said that you're a public speaker and you are comfortable talking to groups or individuals, etc.
Mm.
Good. That's awesome. I am not a public speaker, and I though I have talked to lots of large groups, I don't care for it, though I will do it for the right reasons. I'd just rather slide back into the shadows and just be left alone. But here I am talking to people. Now, here's an important distinction. I love these kind of conversations. I love them. I do these all day long. But these kind of conversations aren't the conversations that typically happen in most rooms.
Right.
I walk into a room and I stand in the middle of the room and own my space, and I look around and I know that this conversation we're having right now will never happen.
Yeah.
What someone will do is walk up to me and say, hi, I've never met you. What's your name? My name's Shaun. What's your name? Bill. Hi, Bill. Pleased to meet you. What do you do, Shaun? Not much.
Yeah.
How about you, Bill? Oh, I sharpen crayons. Cool.
Right.
So, I can have those conversations all day long. They are not fascinating, but I can do them all day long. These are the kind of conversations that fascinate me, but these aren't the type of conversations that your standard issue 18-year-old walks up to on a 60-year-old like me and then just starts wisdomly like chirping. It just doesn't happen. And so if you're an individual who is not a public speaker, and you do have a wealth of life experience, and you find yourself in that room and you're looking around at, I'll call them normies, and you're trying to figure out, how do I interact with these people to gain wisdom from them and inject wisdom the other way? How do I find a common ground? Do we talk about your dog? Do we talk about, it's my job to find those common grounds. But bro, like 10,000 times in a row, I've got to start a conversation with, that's a nice dog you've got there. What's your name? And they're things that don't interest me. I'm not a talk about the weather guy. And so I love these kind of conversations here on the collective because, again, I don't need to know anything about you. We just need to get right to the subject at hand at a deeper level. Now we're interacting. Does that make sense?
Of course. But remember that most of society can't have deep conversations because it frightens them about the intimacy of having to be vocal about, I might sound stupid if I say something, and so we're going to keep it superficial because then I can always cover my astronomical beliefs.
That's the one word you
the
can say
algorithm.
on here.
Yes.
But it's just out of fear that they don't want to have the conversations. Now, if I didn't know anything about Shaun and we were talking, I'm like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And Shaun's like, what do you do for a living? Nothing. Okay, obviously I've been around my share of military guys. That's the standard answer. Good. Okay, well, we're not going to get into that. We're going to talk about, hey, Shaun, man, I love that AC/DC shirt, dude. Seriously, I love the band. I'm curious, start something. Now, if Shaun doesn't engage, then okay, cool. Now, if it becomes superficial, he's like, yeah, and it's just stuff that I'm like, oh my God, is this going to be over soon? Which happens a lot.
It does.
It's really about first of all, why am I in that room? Like that's the main thing. What am I doing in this room? I'm here with my wife. I'm here with my kids. I got to be here because it's my job. Well, now it becomes the game of how can I entertain myself to the best of my ability and still get something of value from it, or maybe I'm supposed to give something of value. Being how old did you say you were, Shaun?
60.
60. So 60 and let's go even late mid-20s, right? Mid-20s of this day. It is extremely difficult to find somebody that you can engage in a conversation with any kind of depth without pulling your hair or their hair out of their heads. But and again, I'm just going to go circle right back before we get off track here is why am I in the room? What am I doing here? If I have to be here under an obligation, well then, yeah, I'm going to sit by the closest table near the window and entertain myself staring and watching people. But if I'm there to be with my kid and he's, I don't know, because you said graduation, all of a sudden I just pictured a whole room filled of 18 or 19-year-olds at a graduation.
Oh, yes, it was.
Yeah.
That's a whole different day. And then what are you doing now? I don't even know Shaun, but Shaun, how much people watching did you do during that whole thing?
How many hours are there in a day?
Yeah,
there isn't
right?
a millisecond that I'm not observing.
Right. Now, so the only difference between somebody who people watches and just takes observations, and then you look at people who have interactions with others where they're diving into the conversation. The truth is that most people can't have deep conversations, which I think we've already dealt with. Mm-hmm. So how do I have a deep conversation with somebody who has superficial conversations? There's the question that if anybody wants to come up with a great answer to that, I'll be happy that this is recorded. So
here's my answer. I don't. And I'll tell you why, Marcus, and you're probably getting close to the realization. If not, then you've already had it. TikTok, John Wick. TikTok.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking. And every second that slips by is a second you don't get back. And the older you get, the more you realize that. And I realize it to such a degree right now that I don't waste my time. If I'm in a place, I'm using my time wisely. That doesn't mean that I got to talk to anyone or even look at anyone. I can look at the ceiling for an hour and I'm gaining something from it because I realize every second matters. So I use my time wisely. But if I'm interacting with someone, I don't care. I don't care what band you listen to, bro, unless that's all we can talk about.
Right.
And if that's all we can talk about, I'll probably within a minute or two understand what your favorite song is, and then it'll be okay, I'll catch you later, and we'll never talk again because I just don't have the time. But if at some point while you're describing your favorite band and your favorite song, I think, ooh, that interests me. This would be good for both of us. Then I'll engage. Yeah. But there just isn't enough time anymore for me
Mhm.
to waste time not using my time.
Right.
That's a great point. Any other thoughts before I jump into the next section here? Okay, we got a couple great comments. Doc C is in the house watching. He says, in therapy, a poignant moment of loneliness is during certain times like Sundays, holidays, Christmas, called situational loneliness, which is something that is more based around the holiday or the time period, or a memory of that time period at some point. He says, I meant the clients felt situational loneliness many times. And so that is it's an accurate thing to be brought up. And I think it's also something to be aware of, in that situational loneliness is also different from a generalized feeling of loneliness as well. So that's something to be aware of.
And situational loneliness is a result of emotional state.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, whether there's someone there with you or there's 1,000 people around you, that's all up in your emotions. Whether it's at Christmas time, there's someone there or not, that's emotional. But I'll tell you where situational loneliness is for reals: when you're laying in the middle of a swamp, staring through a 10 power for a few days all by yourself. That is literal aloneness. That is situationally alone. And until you have to be really alone to context against the emotional sense of alone, well, guess what? Those are two different things.
Well, like we say pretty regularly, like you say pretty regularly on here, it's you got to push yourself to those limits to see what the limits are before you can even say one thing is possible or not, or if you really want to engage in something like that. Now I want to hit this. We've talked about loneliness quite a bit. I think we've covered ground on it quite well, but I want to get into emotional intimacy, because I think that's a big thing that especially men, we don't do well. So I'm going to give a quick definition on it, and then we're going to carry on to the conversation. So it says, emotional intimacy is an aspect of interpersonal relationships that foster trust and a profound sense of security within a relationship. It involves a perception of closeness to another, sharing of personal feelings, and personal validation. When you are emotionally intimate with your spouse, you may feel as if you can see into the other's soul, knowing their hopes, dreams, and fears, and understanding them at a deep level. Emotional intimacy can vary in intensity from one relationship to another, and varies from one time to another, much like physical intimacy. And the reason I really like that definition was the fact that I think a lot of times we hear the word intimacy and we think of physical intimacy, versus the emotional intimacy is exactly what we're doing here. We are being emotionally intimate with one another in the fact that we are being open, we're being honest, and we're having these discussions from a place of humility. I think at the core of it is that we're all open to the discussion. Any thoughts on the definition, or anything popping up to the top of your guys' head on that?
Mm-hmm. I'll throw in my 2 cents to kick it off. Where I best learned emotional intimacy is through the physical intimacy of BJJ. So whatever level I was at, let's say I was level 2 out of 10 on this subject. After 8 years on the BJJ mats, my level is maybe a 7 out of 10, because through the physical intimacy of, like, listen, unless you've done BJJ, you haven't hugged as many guys as I have. And that's just the way it is. You hug a lot of guys all the time. Initially, it's uncomfortable how comfortable you've got to get with other guys. And so through that intimacy of the fighting art, you start to develop a greater sense of emotional sensitivity to the person that you're connected to in that moment. You become, I feel, a lot better at engaging in the intimacy of physicality and emotionality co-joined, which I have found to be the most powerful antidote for men.
Anybody else got any thoughts on that?
Well,
for me, not just
Yep.
for me. I'm not saying that it's the number one in the world and y'all are number two now and whatever you say.
Right.
Same for me.
Emotional intimacy in general, whether it's emotional or physical, many people have a difficulty with it because of fear, right? We have fear of rejection, fear of ridicule, whatever. So you can't really be intimate with somebody unless you're willing to take a leap of a leap of faith, or a leap of, I'm going to give this a shot, and I'm hoping that as a result it doesn't blow back in my face. And then all of a sudden it does blow back in your face enough times, and then you just shut down and say, well, I don't want to be heard anymore. When you're speaking, especially with the young people that we have right now, everything is so digitalized that it's difficult to get, I don't want to say, there's a big difference when you're sitting face to face with someone, and you don't have, like when you're texting, you have a moment to pause. Am I going to write the right answer? I can say the right things. I can search for the answer so I don't look stupid. But when you're engaging with somebody face to face, or even like this right now, it's a sense of, I'm being completely open in how I am. Now I do that because I'm not afraid of any of you gentlemen coming back and lashing out at me in a negative. If there's something I'm saying that is incorrect, or I'm going to be corrected on because I was incorrect on something, I look at it as an opportunity to learn and to be educated. That comes from a security of, I've made a fool of myself in the past, and I didn't like that feeling at all. However, it's the only way I'm going to learn is by trust and not living in fear. And I think that's the hardest thing for most men to understand, is because we're told at a young age, real men don't cry, all the garbage that we're culturally told. And it doesn't matter what culture it is, men in general are raised a specific way, and we're trying to change that. And intimacy, I think being okay with intimacy, in my opinion, is the first step to that, not living in fear. Yeah,
I like that. Matt or Zach, you got anything? Matt, I'm going to throw you on.
Oh, okay. I was going to throw Zach on, but so when it comes to like relationships, my thoughts on this is for relationships and intimacy. And you were kind of mentioning at the beginning how men kind of struggle with that emotional intimacy in a partner, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming we're talking about a female partner to a male partner.
Could be both.
It could be both, but I'm going to address this one as I know it, as a male to a female, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, if you guys want to jump in on that. But women are more nurturers, men's are more protectors, right? That's kind of how our brains are kind of wired a little bit. In my thinking with intimacy, it's not that we're not intimacy or not intimate with our female partner, is that there's just a miscommunication, right? They're thinking like, I want to be nurtured. I need this emotional help. I need, to have my back, to trust me and all that stuff. When my partner came to me with a problem, my instant response was, hey, I got to fix that. Or, hey, how can I protect her from that? Or how can I, all she wanted was a hug and me to be there with her. But I'm like, okay, we got to go crush out something because, this is a problem and it's now a threat. And the whole squirrely brain starts going off, right? I think it's just a different means of communication. And there has to be instead of reacting with just communicating in that regards, you have to stop, step back, and actually talk not in the moment, but about the moment with your partner, right? So it's like, hey, I'm feeling this. All I need from you is, right? Versus, hey, I'm feeling this. And the other person's like, okay, so I have to assume what I have to do to correct this.
Yeah. Zach, you have any thoughts?
I think one of the things is listening. Can we listen to one another? I can be speaking, but if no one is letting it come within their membranes, I don't think we get anywhere. So I think with intimacy, it's about care. It's about the opportunity at hand. I was at the airport earlier this week, and I was observing, and everyone's just on their phones. That's it, just looking down at their phones, thinking, we're sitting next to each other. Why can't we say hello? You don't always have to, but what happened to this disconnect from strangers? So I think it's really important that we listen to one another while we share with one another.
That's a great point. Yep. Shaun or Mark, you got anything to add on to that?
Well, I would say one of the reasons that I'm less prone to engaging with absolutely everyone around me is because I've engaged with absolutely everyone around me most of my life. And I won't say how many times I'm disappointed, but it's more than 1 out of 10. Like at what point do you just stop and quit? Well, I've never stopped or quitted in connecting with the people around me. What I've had to do is modify my ratio because over many decades, I've just established a pattern of my, we'll call it sense of success in those moments. And by success, I mean it engages me and it engages the other person. And so I'd say maybe 2 out of 10 people interest me, maybe 3 out of 10, depending on the time of year or where I'm at or my mood to some degree. So I don't find 10 out of 10 people don't interest me. And I'm not going to try 10 out of
Mhm.
10 times to engage in everyone around me. Because again, I've established I don't have enough time, but I've already patternized my sort of risk reward ratio. If I just kept engaging with everyone in the world and always getting that disappointment 7 or 8 times out of 10, like when does it wear you down?
Yeah.
And so I'm managing my getting worn down by the world to some degree so that I can stay positive, forward trajectory oriented, engaging with the people around me, wanting the best for them, and then wanting the best from them for me, but not with every single person who stands next to me if I don't know them. The people who stand next to me that I give a 10 out of 10 to are the people who've been standing next to me for more than a hot minute. But for the rest of the world, I'd love to engage with it all, but I don't have 8 billion minutes.
That's a good point. Dr. C's got a great point here I want to put on, and it's too perfect. Caring deeply makes you vulnerable. Things don't always go your way, but caring deeply is also key to a big, meaningful life. In that,
Yes, yeah.
you don't get to experience the really awesome parts of life if you don't buy into those parts of life. And I think it's important that we recognize that, in the fact that sometimes being emotionally intimate with somebody is going to put the walls down, and it opens you up to some pain, it opens you up to some hurt, it opens you up to negativity and all kinds of things. But if you don't do that, you will live your life alone, not in solitude, alone, whether you have
Well,
people around you or not.
and let's just take the word intimacy away from man woman, okay,
Mhm.
or from who you're sexually attracted to.
Yeah.
For me, with my friends, my male friends, I need to have an emotional intimacy because I need to know what they're going through so that they feel comfortable to share with me when they're in their dark times.
Hmm.
And the only way that happens is for me to be completely transparent with my guys. Now, I take it a little bit different than maybe others. I am in general in a in a mood of, hey, how you doing? I ask questions, what have you. Now, I'm only that way because I spent the first half of my life as not a very nice person. So, the word approachable is something that I'm happy that people can say, hey, Marcus, you're an approachable person. I like hearing that because I was unapproachable for so many decades. So I'll go out of my way to say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? What's happening? Most people now, tell me I'm wrong. How many people do you talk to where they actually want to talk back to you? So having communication or a lack of communication isn't a problem. Hey, how you doing? Great. And they just keep walking. Or as Zach mentioned, everybody's on their phones.
Hmm.
So intimacy, in my opinion, needs to be, being comfortable and open with myself so that I can be available for those that need me to be available. And more importantly, I want to lead by example so that when I'm around my friends and I am like, hey, I'm here for you in this way, that they will see that it's okay to be intimate with another man, that it's okay, it's not negative, that it's positive to sit there and be available, not just in words but in actions and in from the emotional part of it. And I don't even like using the words emotion because it conjures up Karens and people acting the fool. But emotionally, I'm happy I have emotions and I want to be there for the people that I'm investing time in, because Shaun's right, you know, you have limited amount of time. So who's worthy of your time? I don't have it quite the same way, in my opinion, as Shaun, and that you're on a certain amount of time, and I respect it, I get it. I'm a little more giving of it because, well, it's just I'm just walking a different path than that.
Mm-hmm.
But intimacy comes down to being okay with whatever negative is going to come your way. And I don't live in fear. I try my best not to live in fear. And to be open and available to people gives me the opportunity to tell fear to go kick rocks and live a more engaged lifestyle. Now, again, that's just me, and I want to make sure that we're clear on that. It's not and
I love it.
nobody needs to drink the Kool-Aid.
Just to just to put a little bit of gasoline on that fire, or as I like to say, turn that rotary dial up, Marcus. Let's go. Oh, it's about to go, bro. So
Okay.
you know, you're trying to figure out who's worthy of your time, we'll say, or how best to spend the time that you've got on the planet to some degree, and you're using that more, if I understood you correctly, you're pushing your time towards others. Is that the case?
No, I was going in comparison to when you said that, because you're 100% right about how we have a finite amount of time on this planet, and you're very cautious with how much you're going to invest in time, and people will be a waste of your time. And all my sentence is that for myself, when I'm out and about in the world, that I'm a little more giving or forgiving of time, because of the fact that I know, and again, I'm doing opposites to what I used to be, right? My past, I would shut everybody away. So I'm basically just knee-jerk reaction now for the rest of my years to being a lot more open to the opportunity of spending time with people, regardless of whether I know them or don't.
Okay, that's good. That's how I understood it. So now here's where I turn up the rotary dial.
Cool.
If you've kind of gone from one end to the other end, where you're now focusing on giving, guess what? How much time are you giving to yourself now? Because back in the day, maybe you were giving it all to yourself. Now maybe you're giving 90% of your time to others around you, but you've slipped in the sense of giving yourself enough time. And so just let me draw up the comparison. It's a loose piece of an equation. If I say if there's 8 billion people on the planet and I had to give them a minute per, that's 8 billion minutes that I don't have. But then what about me? How about I need 8 billion minutes myself? Now we're at 16 billion minutes. You see how the math works?
Well,
I'll give you a math equation, Shaun. How about this? How about
I'm not very good at math, so
no,
right. The sniper's not good at math. Okay.
Here's the thing. I'm giving you guys time, and I got 3 awesome dudes here giving me feedback and everything. So I mean, that's a well,
you pointing at me? You're saying I'm not giving back?
No,
he's already ruled me out.
See, I'm not good at
Wasn't
math.
this about math?
I'm an engineer. I'm not good at math. No, okay, 4. Sorry,
there we go.
The screen switched. And I couldn't count. It's a multiplier. It's a multiplier though. So if I'm giving you 2 minutes and you have valuable input, right? That gets multiplied up to 8.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, you win.
Okay.
All right. I see where it's going.
But you are right where
you
it's
jerk.
I know. Right?
That's well played. That's good math.
Nice.
That's good math.
Even though I can't count, we're good. But I can see your point though, where it can be a deficit too as well. If you are putting your time into someone else and they are drawing more from you than giving, right? And I'm not saying like be greedy and just like find people or be with people that are actually giving you more so that you can be better, but it's a give and take. But if there is a negative draw, then that's an issue, and that's when you start got to reassess and go from there.
Yeah.
Worst part is I do believe when we're starting off the collective, one of my biggest things that I was chirping between Chance and I, and I think Zach has heard this before. Have you ever heard me say multiplication of force multiplier? I'm gonna force multiply this thing. And freaking Matt coming in with my own comment that I've kind of
Engineer
forgotten.
correcting
Bro.
the infantry. And it's interesting how that happens. Anyway, I do have a great comment on here from Carl. It goes to exactly what we're talking about. He says, just been thinking, being alone can also be taking on responsibility. I was on PLQ and I was talked to by the instructors because I would always end up doing all the work during the small party task. And I think that's what you're talking about, Matt, is the fact that you can just start taking it all on. You can just start like, oh, well, I need to do this for everybody else. I need to do this for everybody else. And you just start giving without actually understanding that you still have to be able to do stuff. Right? If you give
And
out
maybe
all
that's
of
not
your
what they
energy.
want either. Yeah, maybe
And
that's not
exactly.
what they need, right? Maybe they need to do those small party tasks so they can learn and they can tell someone else to go do the smart party pack. But if I'm doing it all, they're not learning it. And it's the same thing in the kitchen now too. If I'm doing someone else's recipes or prep or anything, they're not learning. They won't be able to do it next time.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's a balance.
Balance is the key, I think. Now we're running close on time. I want to hit a bunch more of these comments because there's a ton here, which I really appreciate everybody commenting. Are there any other thoughts before we dive into some of these? Good. Okay. So we're going right back up to the top. Carl says, loneliness is a double-edged sword. One can be so used to being alone that when they need help, they have a hard time reaching out and accepting a group, or having the anxiety of not being accepted into said group, which I think is a double-edged sword. But I think that's again the difference between solitude versus loneliness. Am I off base on that? You guys good with that one? Satch says y'all should have a swear buzzer. I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna put one in here and start buzzing people out. Satch says, I agree with that, Matt. I find myself quite content in my own solitude, but it's taken a few years of constant work internally to get to a point where I don't feel that lonely anymore. I just think that's cool. He says, so I believe being okay alone is a learned skill, which I agree 100%. Dr. C says, language has created the word loneliness to express the pain of being alone, and it has created the word solitude to express the glory of being alone, from Paul Tillich. I think that's a great quote. We're going to have to use that somewhere.
I'm going to smash out some solitude today.
Dang right. Up on the single track, I imagine. He says, loneliness linked to feeling socially disconnected triggers the body stress response, mimicking a state of threat and causing psychological and emotional stress-related alterations. There you go. Disconnection. Emotional intimacy can play a significant role in the recovery process for individuals with PTSD. I know that helped me especially. A sense of emotional connection can help creative, supportive environment and promote healing. 100% on that one.
I'd just like to add this to Doc C. I think he's right on the money there, but an added twist to this or a force multiplier on this comment is that the individual has also got to know that what they're doing is enhancing that emotional intimacy.
Yes.
So what I mean is, don't tell anyone, hey, BJJ is going to improve your emotional intimacy. Good luck. Just keep informing them of the process and why it's doing what it's doing, and reinforcing the idea that every day they show up to do X, Y, and Z, the outcome is A, B, C. And so it's not just a one and done. Good luck. I hope you figure it out. Help people understand that the process reinforces the process.
100%. And to that point, excellent point about BJJ and emotional intimacy. Should be an episode in of itself. So we'll probably set that up. Maybe Doc C and Gino could come in on that one. I think it'd be good.
Throw the Slavage in there as well.
Ooh, and the Slavage. Yeah, that'd be great. Salty Jinx says, solitude. Love my alone time for self-evolution. And loneliness is something I get hit with around social settings and the difference at work with people who don't share common experiences. Those who haven't been deployed being a big one. And being outnumbered by those who didn't deploy. That, that's a whole episode in and of itself, dealing with the issues around deployment and coming home. And we will, you know what? I'm going to make that an episode, and we're going to talk about that for sure.
Scribble it down.
Yep, writing it down right now.
Crayons.
And but that's all the comments I got. Let's go down the list and get some final thoughts. Zach, you're at the top of my list. Got final thoughts? Anything we've gone over today?
No, I think we covered quite a bit today, and I appreciate all of you for the vocalization and the time. I think we're all learning and healing from one another and everyone else that's involved. So thank you.
Matt, got any thoughts?
Marcus, I love your shirt. Batman's cool. We've just touched the tip of the iceberg, really. I mean, we could keep this going on
Yeah.
all month long.
Mhm.
Of course, we're going to try it.
Seriously.
But there's a lot of, and it's a lot of information that needs to be passed on. And again, we need to be open up. And I love the comment that was made is that you have to be intimate with yourself so that you can be intimate with someone else to understand their point. I think it was Marcus that said something along those lines.
Somebody.
Yeah, somebody. But yeah, we're just touching the tip, and there's so much more that we can get into if we want
Absolutely.
to.
100%. Marcus, final thoughts?
Honestly, I think those two boys just sat there and took the words right out of my mouth. Nothing else that I'm going to say. It's just going to seem like I copied what they said. So just going to go ditto and ditto.
There you go. Ditto and ditto. Shaun, any final thoughts?
Just 3 words, 3 different words that are sometimes confused to mean the same thing. Lone, individual. Alone, even if you're in a crowd or not. Loneliness, even if you're in a crowd or not. So think about lone, alone, and loneliness. They're very different things. And if you've never thought about the depth of each one, maybe you've just never really thought as to how to move out of your phase that you're in.
Yeah. This is a very large
Mhm.
subject, and the reason I wanted to put them together specifically was the fact that they play into each other, right? You have to be, I can't say you have to be, in order to remove yourself from loneliness, you have to be emotionally available and intimate, whether that be with yourself or with others. And if you are not emotionally intimate with yourself or others, you will end up in a lonely state. From my experience, that's what I've seen. So as we learn how to build our emotional intimacy, as we grow, I did it again. I screwed it up, but we're going to carry on. As we build our ability to be in solitude, we can grow into better men, better people, and just do it better every day. So we'll see y'all tomorrow on The Collective. Chimo.
Chimo.